Hello potential friends and adventurers, I'm Em and today we're going to talk about how to avoid accidental railroading in roleplay. Welcome to DM Table. As it were, lots of new or not even so new DMs come to varying forums that I've been reading over the years and they ask, how do I avoid railroading my players? I don't want that to happen, and yet it seems to me like I'm railroading them. How do I avoid it happening? Or they just have to settle the story and they want to get out of that railroady situation. And mind you, for those that don't know, railroading refers to, in role-playing mostly, to you basically placing your players on a track and not letting them get off, and basically treating them like they are narrative pieces in your book and not actual free people to play as they would like. And this can happen outside of role-playing as well. Think of if you played it in Oblivion, that one notorious potentially quest. Certainly it seems to me like it would be notorious for this. You try to potentially help the person to regain their home. They were thrown on the streets by the guard, and you want to help the man get back, but he gets drunk and conflict with the guards is unavoidable, and they're kind of, as far as I remember, it has been a while, rude, and the guards are, and conflict is potentially gonna happen. Now, if you wanted to play something like you're a big, strong hero that can kick the guards left and right, no problem, you may have wanted to go along as a protection for this person and let him do his business, albeit you may have hoped that he would do it politely and without risking his life. But also, I guess, spoiler warning, sorry, for those who haven't played. The thing is, what happens is that he charges the guards, and now this is Oblivion, a game that's been known on YouTube at the time as everybody just going on these rampages, kicking 20 guards, testing spells on them, doing whatever the heck. And now you're there, and you know what happens? The game locks you out of your controls. This is potentially the only time where this feels like it's not an animation, it's not a cutscene, it's like you're there, and this quest was designed to bring pain to you, player, to make you suffer, to make you feel weak. It wants you to suffer for its dramatic benefit, except there's nothing dramatic about a game that never disables your control except that one time. So you're there, frozen in your body, looking at how the person you promised to help is getting killed by these simpleton louts that you could punch with one hit into unconsciousness, and it's not even only that, it's like you had different plans. If you were actually weak and you needed to worry about guards, or if you were a law-obeying citizen or anything of the sort, really, you would plan for this. You did not expect to be unable to say anything, do anything, interact with this in any manner, and yet the game does it to you. Now, this is what kind of railroading can happen when somebody is callous about how they write their game or lead their table. When you're about to think of something as a cutscene, think how not to think of it as a cutscene. Just don't have things that are pre-meant to be happening. They are not meant to happen. They are reasonably likely to happen. They would be cool to happen, potentially. They might be cool to happen, but they are not meant to happen. Players should have unbound freedom about at least their will. Some things are not realistic in the world, some things are not nice in a setting or a genre, some things are not fine for your players to say around the table. But all other things are fine for your players to wish to do, and all of the things are fine to discuss, to potentially implement. They are not something that is locked in, so don't treat your table, don't treat your game, don't treat anything unless resources eventually, if you're a game designer and not a tabletop DM, force you to. Don't consider anything set in stone, because it isn't. And that's one of the tenements on how to not railroad, really. Let's discuss methods to how to achieve this. There is this thing that, let's call it reciprocation. You want to see what situations that your players will go into will cause in the world and what the world will reciprocate with. It's not that you should pre-write the story. It's more like you should, as everybody else also advises, have points of interest in the story. Narrative arc that is then followed by another narrative arc and another and such. Those are just sort of conceptually preconceived but not set in stone, and they will sort of happen as a result of interaction of the players in the world, and things change and stay the same depending on reactions of everybody, not just one person, and then they move along, but also actions of that one person influenced everything, and actions of everything else influenced that one person. It might be hard to think this all up at the spot, but not as hard as people think. It's sort of not sufficiently well-known secret that DMing doesn't need as much preparation as some people would believe. It's enough to sort of think logically on the fly. Now, I hear that some people are not good at thinking on the fly, and also I wouldn't wish this on somebody who has problems with that and a stage fright, because, well, I know what stage fright is, at least. So, yeah, that would lock you up, potentially, but if you can get over being in front of a group and running the game, leading the game, then this becomes easy. It's more the stage fright that's binding you, not the actual process of simulating the reactions of the world on the player's actions. That sort of, with some practice, comes naturally, and you can somewhat pre-think how your players will act, but as people say, players will surprise you, and then, you know, that will be fun for you too, and it won't get stale, and we'll all have fun then, both DM and the players, and keep on with the campaign. What you may want, though, and that's the next step, is a method of returning to the story, like a mechanic. That's a neat thing to have. Instead of railroading people, you might have something that's like activity loop that's very rewarding to your players to get back to. And once you find out their interests, it's easier to plan for activity loop that keeps them getting back to it, so to speak. They keep returning to the things they like, that they're interested in. As such, as long as those things interact with your internally proposed story, they'll be there to witness whatever is gonna happen, and then if it influences their interests and in-campaign hobbies and lives, they will interact with them and sort them out, do a thing or two to them. And that's how you get the story naturally, organically, and that's how you have a mechanical returning to the story. Now, I'll have a later episode on great activity loops. It's a big topic, and I will enjoy telling you about it because I love great activity loops. That's what gets me frequently interested in me playing a game or in a campaign. Because when you have a great activity loop, players feel like they can reliably get what they want out of your campaign. So this is probably going to be part of your pitch if you're wanting to run something specific. You're going to tell your players about your activity loop in such a way as, per se, presenting Monster Hunter, the game, the video game, to people who haven't played it. Think about that for a moment. I mean, you have these giant dinosaur-like creatures that are wonderful and exotic and powerful and have, from within game perspective, a feeling of as if they were like players themselves. leveled, powerful, and so on. And you go to hunt them fair and square. They're just as strong as you are, maybe stronger, and there is a reason to it, and so on and so forth. And as such, also, when you have these activity loops, you can have then grand goals that players themselves set for themselves, which are some of the best, as well as grand goals that you can insert from within the world into your players' potential optimal achievement list. And there they go, following the optimal achievements that they would like to set for themselves. And a grand, epic, wonderful story is born from people just wanting to be the best they can be. And when you have these activity loops, you have players creating for themselves, by themselves, grand goals, which are some of the best grand things that you can have in your campaign. And then you can also insert some from within the world into the player's path of achievement. And then when you have grand goals, that's where you have a grand campaign, and the more thick it gets, the more intricate it gets. Also, grand destinations serve to strengthen the story just as much as grand goals serve to strengthen the story. If you've watched a series or played something that just keeps you going from location to location that's wondrous, and happenings that are wondrous to you, that just creates interest by itself. It's something that you won't want to stop. So if there's a loop to how you move from place to place, say if you played Myst or any of the sequels and such of Myst video game, you will know that locations are just wondrous enough that story almost comes second, except it's a good story, so it doesn't come second as a result. But you now have a vehicle, so to speak, to move your players to the story, because as soon as they are done with one pocket plane, I know this needs some Myst explanation for those who haven't played it. When they're done with one pocket plane, they go to the next, and the next one is a whole new revelation on its own, and so on and so forth, and then you encounter pieces of the story, and you didn't need to railroad the players whatsoever, because you had a series of small worlds that they visit to discover wonderful little mechanics that they can interact with to grow in power, potentially, especially if you played Uru. That really has you be a planeswalker and become more powerful and knowledgeable as you move along. It's sort of meant to feel like the game is training you to become a planner traveler and somebody who will shape history in the times to come, along with the other players. So it has a loop of you discovering further pieces of your future mechanics that you want to study from and powers that you want to achieve and grab for yourself. Once you have something so engrossing that it has both great activity loop and great location chain that somehow has methods of calling your players to A, to B, to C, place of interest, and fast, mind you. You probably would want to think how these things can move fast enough, because you want to let your players have off days and wander around the town. Therefore, you want to be efficient when things get started. How do things quickly escalate and quickly replace the scenery and get to the point? But this needs some practice, and I'm still learning that part a bit myself, and trying to optimize for things being very mobile once they get going. Also, this is another thing, speed of flow. I'll probably be doing an episode on that, but essentially it's like building a custom racing track. You want high octane action and then brakes with magnificence, and then high octane action and brakes with magnificence, so that players can settle their heart rate and then go on again with more gusto the next time. And yeah, I guess you can probably tell that I have modded some racing games in my time, but yeah, this is true for almost any medium. I remember somebody doing an analysis of writing once and saying that some of the greatest books were written with this sort of pace in mind, just always escalating the grandeur on the next achievement, giving a sort of upward staircase with dips chart. That seems to be the case. Good breaks with good speed are the key to the flow. Tell me in the comments if you have some questions. In fact, any questions. I would really like to discuss with you anything you may have in mind or help you with your DMing. And if you have subject for an episode, all the better. We can enjoy it later together. As usual, I wish you the best of luck in your adventures and to see you next week.